Today I'm going to be reviewing the SRAM Maven bronze brakes. These are the entry level into the Maven lineup, and SRAM has been on quite the journey with their brakes over the past decade or so, even longer than that. And I was really excited to get to try the new Maven platform, but more specifically in like an entry level offering, which I think SRAM has really struggled to deliver on in the past. But so far I've been really impressed. So let's get into it. So my first impression getting on these brakes was really positive. I mean, it definitely took an adjustment period to tune them in because they were so much more powerful than what I was used to. Even coming off of TRP DHR Evos, the power that's on tap and how quickly it comes on is, like I said, definitely something to adjust to. But once I made that adjustment, I mean, I have pushed these brakes pretty hard, longer descents, and they kind of haven't blinked once. Like, the stock bleed on the rear brake was a little dicey. I kind of just rode with it for a while, but then as soon as I put a bleed on it, it was fine. And for like the entry level brake, like, I've been absolutely blown away with how these things have held up. I think that was like the main thing I was concerned about with these brakes, especially because my experience with like the Code R's and like other budget brakes is you can get them to feel like pretty good out of the box, but as you ride them, they just seem to deteriorate. The lever feel gets mushy. The lever's moving around on you all the time. But with these, there has been a slight movement in the bite point, but the smoothness at which the lever throws and how hard the pads hit hasn't really changed. And the slight adjustment in bite point through the life of the pad, which has also held up incredibly well, is to me almost negligible, or at least very much within the realm of acceptability for an entry-level brake that doesn't have the pad contact adjust to make up for that. And the degree that they've held up and continued to provide consistent power with fairly good feel, and the lever feels fairly similar to when it was new out of the box. I mean, I really can't ask for much more. And as far as the braking performance itself goes, like, it just never really seems to change. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm looking for out of a brake, is just consistency, especially when things get steep. You're putting a lot of heat into the system. The bite point really doesn't change. Like, it's just been a really impressive experience, and I think it's opened up different possibilities and like more confidence with my riding, because I'm just never really worried about the brakes. While the modulation is something to get used to, it's not something I've felt has hindered my riding at all. It's something I've adjusted to, and then the benefits on the other end of that are, in my opinion, fairly significant. And I think it's a pretty badass choice to put Mavens on a bike like this, which could have easily been slated for a lighter brake set. It's like, I think for years and years and years on so many bikes, it's like you buy something in a complete package and you feel like you're under braked, and you have to go searching for different solutions if you really want to get like that top level of stopping performance. But I would way rather be over braked than under braked, and on this bike it's capable of getting you into situations where you want some serious braking power. So I'm just really stoked that they put these Mavens on a bike like this, which is kind of more of a trail bike. You know, there have been some claims out there, some reviews that have been fairly negative and critical towards this initial lever pull. And I will say it's not the lightest. Like, compared to the DHR Evos, it's much stiffer, but I guess like the follow-up question is like, does that really matter? And for me, like, again, it's something I've had to adjust to, but it's not anywhere close to like causing me arm pump or fatigue. And I don't know, like, that's where some of the stuff from other reviewers has just kind of left me a bit confused. Maybe they just got soft hands, but for me, on the other side, it's like I would way rather have like a bit of a stiffer, you know, pull, but have something that hits in the same spot every time and has a ton of power. Like, for me, what gives me arm pump in a braking situation is really having to wrench on the levers, and like that was something that I had to do a lot with my codes to a certain degree with different Shimano brakes. Is like the power you get out of the system is really reliant on how hard you're squeezing the levers, and that just like puts you in situations where sometimes you got to squeeze the levers really hard. And on these, I feel like I'm always just giving the brakes a really light touch and they're responding with impressive amounts of power. So not once have I felt like I'm gripped on the bike trying to slow it down. And I think that like translates into less arm fatigue and just more confidence. And even though it might be overkill for this bike, I always feel like I have power in the bank. You know, I'm not worried about running out of power. Like if I really need to stomp on them, these brakes have my back. The pad life has been super impressive. They come with metallic pads. I've had this bike for almost 5 months now, and I still have a decent amount of pad life left. And the pistons are still hitting the rotor like fairly evenly. But yeah, I'm not affiliated with SRAM in any way. These are just the brakes that came stock on this bike that I bought. I'm just fired up that I think SRAM's finally delivered a package, especially in a budget option, that holds up to a really high level of riding, a really high level of performance, and has held up from a reliability and consistency standpoint, you know, 5 months into riding these brakes. Like maybe the only downside is if you're really picky about your bite point and where those are hitting, you might need to be a bit more on top of your bleeds. You don't have the luxury of that pad contact adjust, but from a pure performance standpoint, don't think there's a whole lot left on the table because they haven't really faltered that much. So I'm sure the silvers are a little bit better, but like I still think the ceiling's really high. Yes, they are quite heavy, but I don't know. Not once have I thought about, man, it's really too bad my brakes are so heavy right now. That hasn't affected my riding once, you know, not consciously at all. On a bike like this, I have no desire or need to go any bigger on the rotor size. I think you'd have to be piloting a really heavy e-bike or riding some pretty serious stuff to need 220s. But yeah, to wrap this up, I would say still not the most modulation. You do kind of have to adjust your riding. And if you prefer something with a lighter lever throw, the Dominion or DHR Evo still might be a better option. Those are still very powerful brakes. I just think this Maven kind of delivers on that kind of to another level. The amount of upkeep I've had to do to keep these feeling on point has been very little. And like I said, I'm just really impressed with this brake set, especially for being a budget option from SRAM. I wouldn't hesitate to take this bronze level brake racing, to bike park trips. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is even though this is an entry-level product for the Maven line, it's not holding back my riding experience really in any way. The only thing I can really knock it for is maybe it's not the most buttery initial lever throw, and you maybe don't have the most modulation, but the consistency and power this brake delivers totally outweighs those slight disadvantages, at least for my riding style. I've been super impressed. So let me know what you guys think. Are you guys still loving the Mavens? Have you guys had like bad experiences with them? Like, I've heard some pretty aggressively bad reviews, and like I said, I'm not trying to like stroke SRAM here. I just think they've delivered a really good product. Feel free to hit me up on Patreon if you guys are liking this content. I post things over there a week or two early, and it's a great way to support the channel if you're finding value from these videos. But besides that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.